The last Coalition ship exploded in a brilliant flash of white light. Admiral Kekstar watched from his command chair aboard the massive Zephyrian flagship, the Dominion's Edge. His forearms crossed over his chest in satisfaction as debris scattered across the dark space before them. The war was finally over. "Admiral, all enemy vessels have been destroyed," reported his second-in-command, General Vexmore. The tall, gray-skinned alien's voice carried through their neural link, a technology that connected all Zephyrians in perfect communication. "The Coalition's surrender has been confirmed across all sectors. 300 years of war had come to an end. The galaxy belonged to the Zephyrian Empire now. Every world that had once defied them was either burning or already under their control. The proud species that had formed the Coalition Defense Force were dead, enslaved, or scattered to the furthest edges of space." Kekstar stood and walked to the massive viewing window. Outside, the wreckage of 1,000 ships drifted like metallic snow. These had been the last defenders of the Coalition capital world. Now that world was nothing but glowing ash and radioactive dust. "Begin the occupation protocols," Kekstar ordered. "I want every surviving world cataloged and secured within the next solar cycle. Far across the galaxy, in a region the Zephyrians considered worthless space." Captain Lisa Grant received the transmission that changed everything. Her small human frigate, the Defiance, floated silently among the asteroids of the Tau Ceti system. The ship was barely 200 meters long, tiny compared to the massive Zephyrian war vessels, but it had kept her and her crew of 43 alive for the past 6 months. Lisa stared at the communication screen with growing horror. The message was clear and brutal in its simplicity. "All Coalition forces surrender immediately. Resistance is futile. The war is over." "Captain," said Lieutenant Ben Collins, her chief engineer. His young face was pale as he read the reports flooding their communication systems. "The Altarians are gone. The Centaurian homeworld has been destroyed. Every major Coalition fleet has been eliminated." Lisa closed her eyes and tried to process what she was hearing. The Coalition had been formed 50 years ago when the Zephyrians first began their expansion across this part of the galaxy. Dozens of species had joined together to resist the alien empire's advance. Humanity had been one of the smaller members, contributing only a few dozen ships and crews to the massive military effort. "What about Earth?" she asked quietly. Ben's fingers moved across his console, searching through the communication channels. After several minutes, he looked up with tears in his eyes. "No response from any human colony, Captain. Earth went dark 6 months ago. The orbital defense platforms, the lunar bases, even the research stations in the outer system, everything is silent. The bridge fell quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's systems." Lisa's crew looked to her for answers she didn't have. They were probably the last free human military unit in the galaxy, floating in empty space with nowhere to go and no one left to fight for. "Captain," said Ensign Nancy Davis from the sensor station, "I'm detecting a weak signal from the Kepler system. It might be human." Lisa straightened in her command chair. The Kepler system had been the location of a small human research outpost, so remote and unimportant that it probably wasn't even on Zephyrian star charts. If anyone had survived, it would be there. "Set course for Kepler 442b, she ordered. "Best possible speed, but keep us hidden. If there are humans alive out there, we need to reach them before the Zephyrians do." On Kepler 442b, Commander Jack Morrison stood in the command center of what appeared to be a simple asteroid mining facility. The installation was built into the side of a mountain and carefully disguised to avoid detection by passing ships. Most visitors would see nothing but automated mining equipment and storage tanks. They would never suspect that 30 of the last free humans in the galaxy were hiding beneath the surface. "Commander, we're receiving surrender broadcasts on all frequencies," reported Dr. Amy Patterson, the station's chief scientist. She was a small woman in her 40s, but her eyes held the sharp intelligence that had made her one of humanity's leading experts in alien technology. "The Coalition is gone," Jack nodded grimly. He had expected this news for weeks. The reports had been getting worse and worse as Zephyrian forces swept across Coalition space like a plague. Species that had fought bravely for decades were being wiped out in a matter of days. "What's the status of Project Lazarus?" he asked. Amy's expression brightened slightly. Project Lazarus had been her idea, developed in secret over the past year as it became clear the Coalition was losing the war. While other species focused on building bigger ships and stronger weapons, Amy had taken a different approach. She studied the enemy, The prototype is ready for testing, she said. If my calculations are correct, we can turn the Zephyrians' greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Jack walked over to look at her workstation. The screen showed complex diagrams and mathematical formulas that hurt his head to look at, but he trusted Amy's genius. She had discovered something about Zephyrian technology that no one else had noticed. Every Zephyrian soldier, pilot, and officer had neural implants that connected them to their technology and each other. These implants gave them perfect coordination and instant communication across vast distances. They were also connected to every piece of Zephyrian equipment, from their weapons to their starships. You're sure this will work? Jack asked. In theory, yes, Amy replied. The question is whether we can get close enough to deploy it. We would need to infiltrate a major Zephyrian installation and access their communication network. Sergeant Kyle Thompson looked up from cleaning his rifle. The veteran Marine had been with Jack since the beginning of the war, and his scarred face showed the cost of fighting aliens with superior technology for the past 3 years. Commander, with respect, we're 30 people hiding in a hole in the ground. The Zephyrians have conquered the entire galaxy. What can we possibly do against them? Jack was quiet for a long moment. Kyle was right, of course. By any logical measure, they were defeated. The smart thing to do would be to surrender and hope the Zephyrians showed mercy to the survivors. But Jack remembered something his grandfather had told him about the old wars on Earth. Back when humans only fought each other, his grandfather had been a soldier too, and he had said something that stuck with Jack through all the dark years of this conflict. The war isn't over until the last person stops fighting, Jack said finally, and I'm not ready to stop fighting. He looked around at his small team. They were engineers, scientists, and soldiers. They were tired, scared, and outnumbered by billions to one, but they were still alive and they still had fight left in them. The Zephyrians think they've won, Jack continued. They think all the dangerous species are dead or beaten. But they've never fought humans before. Not really. They've never seen what we can do when we have nothing left to lose. Outside the hidden base, the stars looked the same as they always had, but everything had changed. The galaxy belonged to the Zephyrian Empire now. They just didn't know yet that humans don't surrender. 3 months after the official end of the war, Admiral Kextar stood in his private chambers aboard the Dominion's Edge, staring at reports that made no sense. Supply convoys were vanishing without sending distress calls. Patrol ships reported equipment failures that their best engineers couldn't explain. Most disturbing of all, some outposts simply stopped responding to communication attempts. These incidents are scattered across 17 sectors, General Vexmore said through their neural link. There's no pattern we can identify. No obvious military strategy. Kextar's forearms gestured in frustration. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered hundreds of species over the millennia. They knew how defeated enemies behaved. Some species fought to the bitter end, throwing themselves uselessly against superior firepower until they were extinct. Others surrendered quickly and accepted their new place in the empire. A few tried guerrilla warfare for a while before giving up when they realized it was hopeless. This was something different. The attacks, if they could even be called attacks, were too precise and too widespread to be random. But they were also too small and scattered to be a coordinated military campaign. It was as if invisible ghosts were playing cruel jokes on his forces. Increase security at all installations, Kextar ordered, and I want investigation teams at every site that has gone silent. Captain Lisa Grant floated in zero gravity inside a Zephyrian supply depot, watching her crew work with quiet efficiency. The Defiance was hidden among the debris of a destroyed Coalition cruiser outside, its hull painted to match the twisted metal around it. Her crew of 43 had spent weeks studying Zephyrian patrol patterns and supply routes before attempting this operation. Charges are set. Captain, whispered Corporal Tony Martinez over the communication link. The Marine moved like a shadow through the alien facility, placing small explosive devices on critical systems. We'll be ready to move in 5 minutes, Lisa smiled grimly. The Zephyrians were incredibly advanced, but they had grown overconfident in their superiority. This supply depot was guarded by only a dozen alien soldiers, and their security systems were designed to detect large-scale attacks, not small teams of infiltrators moving carefully through blind spots. Lieutenant Ben Collins had spent months studying captured Zephyrian technology, learning how their systems worked. More importantly, he had figured out how to make them work in ways their designers never intended. The aliens built everything to be efficient and logical, Humans, Ben had discovered, were very good at being illogical. "Ready, Captain," Ben reported from his position near the main computer core. "Once I upload this virus, their entire communication system will start having random failures. Nothing dramatic, just small errors that will make their job harder." "Do it," Lisa ordered. Ben plugged a small device into the alien computer. The virus he had created was beautiful in its simplicity. It didn't destroy anything or cause obvious damage. Instead, it made tiny changes to communication protocols, introduced small delays in data transmission, and occasionally scrambled non-critical information. To the Zephyrians, it would look like normal equipment wear and random system glitches. The team finished their work and slipped away as quietly as they had arrived. The explosions wouldn't happen for another 6 hours, and by then the Defiance would be long gone. When the Zephyrians investigated, they would find a depot destroyed by what appeared to be an equipment malfunction. The virus in their computers would already be spreading to other installations through routine data exchanges. Commander Jack Morrison studied the tactical display in his hidden command center on Kepler 442b. Green dots marked the locations of other human survivors who had made contact through carefully encrypted messages. Red dots showed confirmed Zephyrian installations. The ratio was sobering. For every green dot, there were thousands of red ones. "We have confirmation from the Luna survivors," Dr. Amy Patterson reported. Chief Petty Officer Nancy Davis had been leading a small group of humans hiding in the ruins of Earth's moon base. "They successfully infiltrated a Zephyrian communication relay and uploaded your virus." "And Captain Parker's team?" Marine Captain Steve Parker reports successful harassment of Zephyrian patrols in the former Coalition capital system. "They've destroyed 3 patrol boats using captured alien weapons." Jack nodded. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Each small success proved that humans could adapt to fight an enemy that seemed impossibly advanced. More importantly, each operation taught them something new about Zephyrian weaknesses. Amy's greatest breakthrough had come from studying the aliens' neural implants. Every Zephyrian was connected to their technology through these devices, which gave them incredible coordination and efficiency. But the implants also created a single point of failure that could be exploited. "The digital virus is working better than we hoped," Amy explained, pointing to data scrolling across her screen. "Zephyrian technology is designed for perfection. When we introduce chaos into their systems, their minds have trouble adapting. They start making mistakes." Sergeant Kyle Thompson entered the command center, his combat armor still dirty from his latest mission. He had led a team of 8 Marines in an assault on a Zephyrian supply convoy, using nothing but basic human equipment and tactics the aliens had never encountered. "Mission successful, Commander," Kyle reported. "We hit them fast and hard, took what we needed, and disappeared before their reinforcements arrived." "The beautiful thing is they still don't understand what they're fighting." Jack understood what Kyle meant. The Zephyrians had conquered the galaxy using overwhelming technological superiority. They had never fought an enemy that relied on adaptability and improvisation instead of advanced weapons. When their technology failed or was used against them, they didn't know how to respond. "What did you learn about their psychology?" Jack asked. Kyle's scarred face split into a grin. "They panic when their implants don't work properly. During the fight, I jammed their communication frequencies with a simple radio transmitter. Once they couldn't coordinate with each other, they fell apart. These aren't soldiers, Commander. They're machines pretending to be warriors." Dr. Patterson had been working on a new project based on Kyle's observations. If the Zephyrians relied too heavily on their technology, she might be able to create something that would turn their greatest strength into a crippling weakness. "I've been analyzing the implant technology we recovered from disabled Zephyrian soldiers," she explained. "The neural interfaces are incredibly sophisticated, but they're also vulnerable. I think I can create a virus that attacks the implants directly." "What would that do to them?" Jack asked. "In theory, it would disrupt their ability to interface with their technology. Their weapons wouldn't respond properly. Their ships would become difficult to control, and their perfect coordination would collapse into chaos." Jack looked around at his small team. 30 humans hiding in a mining station, fighting an empire that controlled the entire galaxy. By any reasonable measure, they were already dead. The smart thing to do would be to surrender and hope for mercy. But humans, Jack reflected, had never been particularly reasonable. "How long do you need to complete this new virus?" he asked Amy. 2 weeks, maybe 3. But we'll need to test it on live subjects, and that means capturing Zephyrian soldiers without killing them. Kyle's grin widened. Leave that to me, Doc. I've been wanting to have a conversation with some of these aliens anyway. Across the galaxy, Admiral Kextar received another report of impossible incidents. A Zephyrian dreadnought had suffered complete system failures while patrolling an empty sector. A ground installation had been abandoned by its garrison, who reported that their equipment had become unreliable and their neural implants were causing headaches. Most puzzling of all, investigation teams were finding evidence of sophisticated sabotage at incident sites. Someone was fighting back against the Zephyrian Empire, using tactics and technology that didn't match any known species. General Vexmore, Kextar said through their neural link, I want every intelligence asset we have focused on identifying this new threat. Whoever is doing this, they're not fighting like any species we've encountered before. Yes, Admiral, but what if they're not a species we've encountered before? The question hung in the space between their minds. The Zephyrians had detailed records of every coalition species. They knew how each race fought, what technologies they used, and how they responded to defeat. But these attacks showed patterns that didn't match any known enemy. Kextar felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of warfare. It was a cold sensation that started in his primary stomach and spread through his nervous system. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. Fear. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, an unknown enemy was learning to fight the Zephyrian Empire. And they were very good students. Admiral Kextar convened an emergency meeting of the Zephyrian High Command aboard his flagship. The holographic projections of his senior officers flickered in the war room as they discussed reports that defied explanation. What had started as minor incidents was growing into something that threatened the stability of their entire empire. The pattern is becoming clear, reported Intelligence Commander Sixtar. Her voice transmitted through the neural link that connected all Zephyrians. We are dealing with a single species operating across multiple sectors simultaneously. Their tactics suggest advanced knowledge of our psychology and technology. General Vexmore added his own disturbing observations. Our garrison commanders are requesting additional security for routine operations. Patrol schedules have been randomized to avoid the attacks that seem to anticipate our movements. Some of our soldiers are showing signs of stress disorders we haven't seen since the early days of our expansion. Kextar studied the tactical display floating before him. Red markers showed incidents across 17 sectors of space. The attacks were small but perfectly coordinated, as if a single mind was directing operations across impossible distances. More troubling was the fact that they were becoming more frequent and more sophisticated. What species are we dealing with? He asked. Unknown, Admiral. The attacks don't match the behavioral patterns of any coalition race in our databases. Whoever is doing this fights like no one we've encountered before. Captain Lisa Grant drifted in the command chair of the Defiance as her ship approached the hidden coordinates Commander Morrison had provided. Over the past month, she had been in contact with other human survivors scattered across the galaxy. The network was small but growing as more isolated groups made contact through carefully encrypted communications. Captain, we're receiving a recognition signal from the asteroid field, reported Lieutenant Ben Collins. It's definitely human, and they're using our current encryption codes. Lisa felt a surge of hope. The message from Morrison's team had outlined something called Project Lazarus, a weapon that could potentially change the balance of power in their favor. If the humans hidden on Kepler 442b had really found a way to fight back effectively, there might still be hope. Take us in, Ben, but keep the engines warm. If this is a trap, I want to be able to run fast. The Defiant slipped between the asteroids until a section of rock opened to reveal a hidden docking bay. Lisa had seen coalition bases before, but this was different. Everything about the installation screamed human engineering, practical, adaptable, and built to survive in impossible conditions. Commander Jack Morrison met her at the airlock. He was a tall man with graying hair and the kind of scars that came from fighting aliens with superior technology, but his eyes held something Lisa hadn't seen in months: confidence. Welcome to our little corner of the galaxy, Captain, Jack said with a grim smile. I hope you're ready to start winning this war. Dr. Amy Patterson led them to the main laboratory, where the results of months of research covered every available surface. Diagrams of Zephyrian neural implants, captured alien technology, and complex computer code-filled screens and work tables. The breakthrough came when we realized that Zephyrian technology is designed around perfection, Amy explained. Their neural implants create a direct interface between their minds and their machines. It gives them incredible coordination and efficiency, but it also creates a vulnerability we can exploit. She activated a holographic display showing the internal structure of a Zephyrian implant. Every alien soldier, pilot, and officer has one of these devices in their brain. They're all connected to a vast communication network that spans their entire empire. Lisa studied the display with growing understanding. You found a way to attack their implants directly. Better than that, Amy said with satisfaction. I created a virus that learns and adapts. Once it infects their network, it spreads automatically and becomes harder to detect over time. The beautiful thing is that it uses their own perfection against them. Lieutenant Ben Collins leaned forward, his engineer's mind immediately grasping the implications. Their systems are designed to optimize themselves automatically. If you introduce chaos into that process, the systems start making mistakes, Amy finished. Small ones at first, but they compound over time. Navigation errors, communication delays, weapons that fire slightly off target. Their technology begins to fail them in subtle ways they can't easily detect or fix. Jack activated another display showing recent operations. We've been testing the concept on a small scale with great success. Sergeant Thompson's team has eliminated 3 Zephyrian outposts using nothing but standard human equipment and basic tactics. Kyle Thompson entered the briefing room as if summoned by the mention of his name. The veteran Marine looked tired but satisfied, like a hunter returning from a successful expedition. The key is understanding that they're not really warriors, Kyle reported. They're technicians who happen to carry weapons. When their implants malfunction, when their perfect coordination breaks down, they don't know how to adapt. We do. Lisa was beginning to understand why Morrison's people were so confident. Humans had spent their entire history adapting to hostile environments and impossible odds. They excelled at improvisation and creative problem-solving. The Zephyrians, for all their advanced technology, had grown dependent on their machines to do their thinking for them. "What do you need from us?" Lisa asked. "Distribution," Amy replied immediately. "The virus works, but we need to infect as many Zephyrian systems as possible to make it effective on a galactic scale. Your ship and crew can reach places we can't." Over the next week, Lisa's crew worked with Morrison's team to prepare for the largest human military operation since the fall of Earth. The plan was audacious in its scope. Simultaneous strikes against Zephyrian communication networks in 7 sectors, designed to spread Amy's virus throughout the alien empire's infrastructure. Chief Petty Officer Nancy Davis arrived from the Luna ruins with 12 survivors and detailed intelligence about Zephyrian installations in the Sol system. Marine Captain Steve Parker came from the former Coalition capital with 15 hardened fighters who had been living in asteroid fields and surviving on captured supplies. "We're still outnumbered millions to 1, Parker pointed out during the planning session. "Even if this virus works perfectly, we're talking about fighting an entire galactic empire with fewer than 200 people. Jack looked around the room at the assembled survivors. They were engineers, scientists, soldiers, and support staff. They were tired, scarred, and operating with equipment that was mostly held together with spare parts and determination. By any reasonable measure, they had no chance of success. "You're absolutely right," Jack said finally. "We can't win a traditional war against the Zephyrian Empire, but we're not fighting a traditional war. We're fighting a human war." He activated a display showing the locations of every known human survivor group. The green dots were pitifully few compared to the red markers indicating Zephyrian installations, but they were spread across the galaxy in places the aliens would never expect. The Zephyrians conquered the galaxy by being superior to everyone else in every way that mattered. Better technology, better coordination, better firepower. They've never fought an enemy that was inferior in all those areas but refused to lose anyway. Lisa understood what he was getting at. Humanity's history was full of examples where smaller, weaker forces had defeated larger. More powerful enemies through superior tactics, better adaptation, and sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. "They think the war is over," she said slowly. "They think they've won." Exactly. They're occupying conquered territory and managing enslaved populations. They're not prepared to fight a war against an enemy they don't understand, using tactics they've never seen before. Dr. Patterson made the final preparations to her viral weapon. The code was elegant in its simplicity. Designed to spread through Zephyrian networks like a digital plague, once released it would be almost impossible to stop or completely remove. The virus will take several weeks to achieve full effectiveness, she warned. The initial infections will cause minor problems, but the real damage will accumulate over time as it spreads through their systems. Kyle Thompson checked his equipment one final time. His team would be responsible for the most dangerous part of the operation, infiltrating a major Zephyrian command facility to ensure the virus reached their core military networks. "Commander," he said to Jack with a rare smile, "I've been fighting these aliens for 3 years and I've learned something important about them. They're not afraid of losing because they've never really been in danger of losing. But fear is a powerful weapon when you know how to use it." As the human teams prepared to leave for their targets, Admiral Kextar received another report of equipment failures and mysterious incidents. His intelligence officers had finally reached a conclusion that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. "Admiral, we believe we are facing a previously unknown species with capabilities that don't match any of our projections. They appear to be capable of large-scale coordination, despite operating in small, isolated units. Most concerning, they seem to learn and adapt faster than our computer models suggest is possible." The liberation of prison planet Zerion 7 began at 300 hours Galactic Standard Time, when Sergeant Kyle Thompson's team cut through the facility's outer perimeter using nothing more sophisticated than industrial cutting tools and careful timing. The Zephyrian guards never saw them coming. Commander Jack Morrison watched the operation unfold from the command center on Kepler 442b, coordinating 7 simultaneous strikes across the galaxy through encrypted communication channels. Each human team was small, outnumbered, and equipped with captured or improvised weapons. By every military doctrine in the known galaxy, they should have been wiped out in the first few minutes of contact. Instead, they were winning. Team 3 reports successful infiltration of the communication hub on Proxima Station, Dr. Amy Patterson announced from her position at the main console. "Corporal Lisa Hayes has uploaded the virus package and is proceeding to secondary objectives." Jack nodded grimly. Hayes had been a computer specialist before the war, working on mundane data processing for a civilian shipping company. Now she was one of their most effective infiltration specialists, capable of breaking into Zephyrian computer systems that their own engineers claimed were impossible to hack. The key was understanding that impossible was a concept that had never made much sense to humans. "Team 7 is encountering resistance at the mining facility," reported Captain Lisa Grant from her position aboard the Defiance. Her ship was providing coordination and support for the ground teams, while staying hidden in the debris field of a destroyed Coalition cruiser. "They're requesting immediate extraction." "Negative," came the reply from Marine Captain Steve Parker. His voice was calm despite the sound of weapons fire in the background. "We're not leaving without the prisoners. These aliens have been experimenting on Coalition survivors for months. We're getting them out." Jack felt a surge of pride listening to his people. They had every reason to retreat, to play it safe and preserve their small numbers for another day. Instead, they were risking everything to save people they had never met, from species they barely knew. It was a very human thing to do. The virus Dr. Patterson had created was spreading through Zephyrian networks faster than anyone had anticipated. What had started as minor equipment glitches was escalating into major system failures as the digital plague learned and adapted to each new environment it encountered. "Admiral, Kextar's flagship is reporting navigation problems," Amy said with satisfaction. "Their primary communication array is experiencing random shutdowns, and their weapon systems are showing targeting errors." The beauty of the virus was its subtlety. It didn't destroy systems outright, which would have triggered immediate countermeasures. Instead, it introduced small errors that compounded over time, making Zephyrian technology unreliable in ways that were difficult to diagnose and impossible to completely fix. Colonel Mike Rodriguez had been presumed dead when Earth fell 6 months earlier. The former commander of Earth's Planetary Defense Force had actually been captured during the final battle for the Sol system and transported to Zerion 7 for interrogation. His rescue was providing intelligence that transformed human understanding of their enemy. "The Zephyrians are more vulnerable than we realized," Rodriguez reported through the communication link from Kyle's extraction team. Their entire military structure depends on perfect coordination through their neural implants. When that coordination breaks down, their tactical doctrine falls apart. Jack studied the tactical displays showing the locations of major Zephyrian installations throughout the occupied territories. Red markers indicated enemy strongholds, while green dots marked the positions of human teams and liberated prisoners. The numbers were still heavily in favor of the aliens, but the balance was shifting. "Colonel, what's your assessment of their psychological state?" Jack asked. "They're scared, Commander. Really scared. They've never fought an enemy that could turn their own technology against them. Their soldiers are starting to question whether their equipment will work when they need it. Fear was a weapon humans understood better than most species. Throughout their history, they had learned that terror could be more effective than superior firepower when applied correctly. The Zephyrians, for all their advanced technology, had never learned to function when their perfect systems became unreliable. Lieutenant Ben Collins had been working around the clock to upgrade the virus based on new intelligence gathered from captured Zephyrian equipment. Each successful infiltration provided new data about alien systems, allowing the humans to refine their digital weapon. "I've isolated the core protocols that control their implant network," Ben reported from his workstation surrounded by alien technology. "If we can infect their primary communication hub, the virus will spread to every connected system in their empire." "Where is this hub located?" Jack asked. "That's the problem, Commander. It's aboard Admiral Kekstar's flagship, the Dominion's Edge. Getting close enough to infect it would require a direct assault on the most heavily defended ship in their fleet." The command center fell silent as everyone contemplated the implications. The Dominion's Edge was a massive vessel, over 5 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could destroy entire planets. It was protected by escort fleets and surrounded by the most advanced defensive systems in the galaxy. Attacking it directly would be suicide. For any conventional force, how many people would we need for this operation? Jack asked quietly. Captain Grant's voice came through the communication system from the Defiance. "Commander, with respect, we're talking about assaulting a ship that has a crew of over 50,000 aliens. Even if our virus has degraded their capabilities, the odds are impossible." Kyle Thompson's voice cut through the discussion with the kind of certainty that came from years of combat experience. "Commander, I've been fighting these aliens since the war started, and I've learned something important. They don't know how to fight when they can't rely on their technology. If we can get aboard that ship and spread chaos through their systems, they'll fall apart." Jack looked around the command center at the faces of his people. They were exhausted, outnumbered, and operating with equipment that was held together with spare parts and determination. Every logical analysis said they couldn't win against the Zephyrian Empire, but humans had never been particularly good at accepting logical limitations. "Dr. Patterson, how long do we have before the Zephyrians find a way to counter your virus?" he asked. "It's hard to say, Commander. The virus is designed to evolve faster than their countermeasures, but they have resources we can't match. If they focus their entire scientific establishment on the problem, they might find a solution within a few months." "Then we don't have a few months," Jack decided. "We need to end this war before they adapt to our tactics." The plan they developed over the next 48 hours was audacious even by human standards. Captain Grant would take the Defiance on a direct approach to the Dominion's Edge, using the ship's upgraded cloaking system and captured Zephyrian identification, codes to get close enough for a boarding action. Staff. Sergeant Tony Martinez would lead a team of 20 Marines in an assault on the flagship's command sections. Their mission was to capture Admiral Kekstar alive and infect the ship's primary computer core with an enhanced version of Patterson's virus. Meanwhile, Kyle Thompson's expanded unit would coordinate simultaneous attacks on Zephyrian installations across 12 sectors, forcing the aliens to divide their attention and preventing them from concentrating their defenses around their flagship. "This plan has about 1,000 ways it can go wrong," Colonel Rodriguez pointed out during the final briefing. "We're betting everything on the assumption that Zephyrian discipline will collapse when their command structure is threatened." "You're right," Jack admitted, "but we're also betting on something the Zephyrians have never encountered before: humans who refuse to accept defeat no matter what the odds." As the teams prepared for what would either be their greatest victory or their final battle, Admiral Kekstar stood in his private chambers aboard the Dominion's Edge. studying reports that made no sense. His empire was coming apart from within, struck by an enemy he couldn't see or understand. "Admiral, we're receiving distress calls from installations across 7 sectors," General Vexmore reported through their neural link. "The coordination is perfect, as if a single command structure is directing operations across impossible distances." Kextar felt the cold sensation of fear spreading through his nervous system. In 600 years of military service, he had never encountered an enemy that could coordinate large-scale operations while operating in such small units. The tactical implications were staggering. "General, I want every available ship recalled to defend the core systems. Whatever species we're fighting, they're preparing for something big." "Admiral, our analysis suggests they lack the resources for a major assault. Intelligence estimates their total numbers at fewer than 500 individuals." "Then explain to me how 500 individuals are simultaneously attacking targets across 12 sectors of space," Kextar demanded. General Vexmore had no answer. The enemy they were fighting didn't behave like any species in their databases. They seemed to thrive in conditions that should have been impossible, achieving results that... Admiral Kextar felt his world collapse as the human boarding pods crashed through the hull of the Dominion's Edge. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the massive flagship while his officers struggled to coordinate a response through neural implants that were failing at the worst possible moment. "Admiral, we have multiple hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, General Vexmore reported, his voice distorted by communication errors. "The intruders are using our own security protocols against us. They appear to know our ship better than we do." Staff. Sergeant Tony Martinez led his 20 Marines through the corridors of the alien flagship with the efficiency of a military unit that had spent months studying every detail of Zephyrian ship design. Dr. Patterson's intelligence had provided them with complete blueprints, security codes, and tactical assessments of crew distribution throughout the vessel. "Team Alpha, secure the primary computer core," Tony ordered through his communication system. "Team Beta, with me to the command deck. Remember, we need the Admiral alive." The Zephyrian crew they encountered fought with the desperation of beings whose perfect technology had suddenly become unreliable. Weapons that should have fired precisely instead shot wildly. Security doors that should have sealed instantly remained stubbornly open. Communication systems that should have coordinated their defense instead transmitted garbled messages and contradictory orders. Lieutenant Ben Collins had done his work well. The enhanced virus he had uploaded to the ship's systems was spreading through every network, turning the aliens' greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Back on Kepler 442b, Commander Jack Morrison coordinated the largest human military operation since the fall of Earth. His tactical display showed green markers advancing against red ones across 12 sectors of space as human teams struck simultaneously at the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. "Kyle's team has successfully liberated the prison camp on Vega Prime," Dr. Amy Patterson reported from her station. "They're reporting over 3,000 coalition survivors, including humans from the Centauri colonies. Captain Parker's unit has destroyed the Zephyrian communication relay in the former coalition capital system. Their entire command network in that sector is down." Jack watched the reports flood in with growing amazement. Human teams that should have been wiped out in minutes were achieving objectives that conventional military wisdom said were impossible. The key was understanding that conventional wisdom had never applied to humans. Aboard the Dominion's Edge, Tony Martinez and his Marines fought their way through corridors filled with confused and panicking Zephyrian soldiers. The aliens' neural implants designed to give them perfect coordination and instant communication had become sources of chaos and conflicting information. "The command deck is just ahead," Corporal Lisa Hayes reported over the communication link. The former computer specialist had become their expert on alien ship layouts during the months of planning. "Security shows minimal resistance. Their command staff appears to be trapped by their own security systems." The irony was perfect. The Zephyrians had built their flagship with the most advanced security systems in the galaxy, designed to protect their command structure from any possible threat. They had never considered that those same systems could be turned against them by an enemy that understood their technology better than they did. Tony's team breached the command deck to find Admiral Kextar standing alone among his officers, all of whom were struggling with neural implants that were feeding them random data and contradictory orders. The four-armed alien commander looked at the humans with something that might have been respect. "You are the unknown species," Kextar said in surprisingly good English. "The ones who have been haunting my empire for the past months." "We're humans," Tony replied, keeping his weapon trained on the Admiral while his team secured the command deck. "And we're here to end this war. Humans." Kextar repeated the word as if testing its sound. "We have no records of your species in our databases." "That's because you never bothered to learn about the smaller coalition members," Tony said with grim satisfaction. "You thought we were too insignificant to matter." As Tony's team completed their mission aboard the flagship, human forces across the galaxy were achieving victories that rewrote the rules of interstellar warfare. Captain Lisa Grant's crew had successfully infected the primary Zephyrian communication network, spreading Amy's virus to every connected system in their empire. Kyle Thompson's expanded unit had liberated 6 prison camps and destroyed dozens of military installations. Marine Captain Steve Parker had captured an entire Zephyrian battle fleet when their crews surrendered rather than fight with unreliable equipment. The war that had seemed hopeless 6 months earlier was ending in a way no one had predicted. Colonel Mike Rodriguez, finally free after months of captivity, stood in the command center of a captured Zephyrian base and opened communication channels to human survivors across the galaxy. His voice, transmitted on frequencies the aliens could no longer monitor effectively, carried a message that would be remembered for generations. "This is Colonel Rodriguez of the Human Defense Force, to all surviving coalition personnel. The war is not over. Repeat, the war is not over. Human forces are advancing across all sectors, and we need every able body to join the final offensive." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Survivors who had been hiding in ruins and asteroid fields for months suddenly revealed themselves, ready to fight alongside the humans who had refused to surrender. The galaxy discovered that the coalition hadn't been completely destroyed after all. It had been waiting for someone to show them how to fight back. On Kepler 442b, Jack Morrison received the surrender communication from General Vexmore with a mixture of satisfaction and disbelief. The Zephyrian Empire, which had conquered the galaxy through 3 centuries of warfare, was offering to negotiate an end to hostilities. "Commander Morrison, this is General Vexmore of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet." The alien's voice came through their communication system. "We request immediate ceasefire negotiations. Our fleet commands are prepared to discuss terms." "The terms are simple, General," Jack replied. "Complete withdrawal from all occupied coalition worlds, release of all prisoners and slaves, and reparations for the species you conquered. In exchange, we'll allow your forces to return to Zephyrian space with their lives." There was a long pause before Vexmore responded. "Commander, you represent fewer than 1,000 individuals. How can you possibly enforce such demands?" Jack smiled as he looked at the tactical display showing human-controlled positions across the galaxy. Green markers now outnumbered red ones in most sectors as liberated coalition forces joined the human offensive. "General, we're not just 1,000 individuals anymore. We're an idea, and ideas, as you've discovered, are much harder to kill than armies." The negotiations that followed were unprecedented in galactic history. Never before had a massive interstellar empire been forced to surrender to such a small force. But the humans had proven that size and technology meant nothing when faced with opponents who refused to accept defeat. Captain Grant, now promoted to Admiral by the Reformed Coalition Council, met with Admiral Kextar aboard a neutral vessel in the Proxima system. The Zephyrian commander looked older than his 600 years as he signed the surrender documents that would end his empire's dominance. "I do not understand how this happened," Kextar admitted as he completed the formal surrender. "Our technology was superior, our numbers overwhelming, our strategy perfect." "That was your mistake," Lisa replied. "You assumed that superior technology and numbers were enough. But you never learned the most important lesson in warfare. The side that refuses to lose usually wins." The aftermath of the war saw the emergence of humanity as the dominant military power in the galaxy, not through conquest but through the respect of species who had witnessed something unprecedented. The humans had taken on an impossible enemy and won through sheer determination and adaptability. Dr. Amy Patterson established the Human Technology Institute on Kepler 442b, where researchers from across the galaxy came to study the principles that had made human victory possible. The secret, she explained to her students, wasn't in the technology itself, but in the willingness to use it in ways the original designers never intended. Kyle Thompson became the first director of the Human Defense Academy, teaching alien students the tactics and psychology that had defeated the Zephyrian Empire. His motto, carved above the entrance to the academy, became famous throughout the galaxy: "Victory belongs to those who adapt fastest." Commander Morrison, promoted to general and given command of the new Galactic Defense Force, often stood in his office looking at the memorial wall that listed every human who had died in the war. The final entry was different from all the others. Instead of a name, it simply read, "To all who never surrendered." Years later, when young beings across the galaxy learned about the war in their history classes, their teachers would struggle to explain how the mighty Zephyrian Empire had been defeated by such a small number of primitives from an unknown world. The answer, when they finally understood it, was both simple and profound. The humans had taught the galaxy that numbers and technology meant